Hello, everyone. Welcome to English Today Journey. I'm so happy you're here. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe because we share daily tips to help you improve your English, step by step. Today, we're going to talk about something very important for learning English: inputs and outputs. These two ideas are the key to speaking and understanding English better. By the end of this episode, you'll know what they are, how they work, and why they are so powerful for improving your fluency. So, what are inputs and outputs? You might be wondering, what do these words mean, and why are they important when learning English? Don't worry. I'll explain everything in a simple way so you can understand it easily. Whether you are just starting to learn English or you have been learning for a long time, this lesson will help you train your brain to think in English naturally. Let's start by thinking about how you learned your first language. Remember when you were a child? Did you sit down and memorize grammar rules or lists of words? Probably not. Most of us didn't study our first language in that way. Instead, we listened, watched, and absorbed the language around us. We heard our parents, siblings, or friends talk. We listened to conversations every day, and slowly, we began to understand what people were saying. Over time, we started speaking our first words. This process is exactly how input and output work. Input is all the language you hear and read. It is the information coming into your brain. For example, listening to someone talk, reading a book, or watching a movie in English. All of these are input. Output is the language you produce yourself, which means speaking and writing. When you talk to someone or write a sentence in English, that is output. When you combine input and output, you practice using the language naturally, just like you did when learning your first language. Why is this so important? Many English learners feel stuck. They read books, watch videos, or listen to English, but when it's time to speak, they freeze. They don't know what to say, or they feel nervous and shy. If this sounds familiar, don't worry. You are not alone. This happens to almost every learner at some point. The key is learning how to balance input and output. You need enough input so your brain understands English and enough output so you can use it yourself. In this lesson, we will go step by step. I will show you how input and output work together. I will also explain common mistakes that slow your progress and how to avoid them. By the end, you will know how to practice English in a way that helps you think, speak, and write more confidently. You don't need to memorize every rule or every word. Instead, you will learn to absorb English naturally and use it every day. So remember, listen, watch, and read as much as you can. That is your input. Then, speak, write, and try to use the language in real situations. That is your output. The more you practice both, the faster you will improve. Learning English doesn't have to be hard. By understanding input and output, you can make it simple, natural, and even fun. Keep practicing, stay consistent, and soon you'll notice your English improving every day. Input and output are the secret to becoming fluent. You already learned your first language this way. You can do the same with English. Learning English is not just about memorizing rules or passing tests. The real goal is to use English to communicate, express yourself, and connect with other people. You want to be able to speak, write, read, and understand English in real life, not just in a classroom. That's why understanding input and output is so important. In this lesson, you'll learn 4 main things. What is input? Input comes from listening and reading. It is the foundation of learning English. What is output? Output is speaking and writing. These are the tools that help you become fluent. How to balance input and output. We will talk about common mistakes and how to avoid them so your learning is faster and more effective. Simple tips you can start using today. These are practical ideas that you can use right away to improve your English. Sounds good? Stick with me, because these tips can really change the way you learn English. And if you haven't subscribed to Code Your English, now is a great time so you don't miss any future lessons. Let's dive into the world of English input and output. What is input in language learning? In language learning, input is all the English you receive and absorb, mostly through listening and reading. It is everything that goes into your brain before you start speaking or writing. Input helps your brain understand the language naturally, without forcing rules or memorizing lists of words. Why is input so important? Let's think about how children learn their first language. Before a child says their first word, they spend months just listening to the people around them. They notice the sounds of words, how sentences are formed, and how people use words in different situations. They watch faces, hear the same words many times, and slowly start understanding their meaning. Then one day, they speak their first word, like mama or dog. This process is exactly how input works. Your brain collects English over time, and eventually it becomes ready to produce language, either by speaking or writing. The same thing happens when you learn English as a second language. You don't have to rush. The important part is consistent exposure to English. A simple example. Let's imagine Sarah wants to improve her English. Every day, she listens to an English podcast for 20 minutes and reads one short news article. At first, she doesn't understand everything, and that's completely normal. Her brain is absorbing words, phrases, and patterns slowly. After a few months of regular practice, Sarah notices that she can understand conversations more easily. Some words and phrases start to feel familiar, and she even begins to use them herself in sentences when she speaks or writes. This is the power of input. It builds the foundation of your English naturally, without forcing it. The key takeaway is, listen and read as much as you can. Input is like watering a plant. You may not see the growth immediately, but with patience and consistency, your brain will be ready to produce English on its own. When Sarah started listening to podcasts and reading news articles every day, she slowly began using new words in her own speaking. This is the power of input. But what exactly counts as input? Input is anything you hear or read in English. It can be listening to podcasts, songs, or conversations. It can be watching movies, TV shows, YouTube videos, or reading books, news articles, or social media posts. Every time you do these things, your brain is collecting new words, grammar patterns, and natural sentence structures, even if you don't realize it. Over time, this input becomes the foundation for your speaking and writing. Why input comes before output? You can't speak or write what you haven't first heard or read. Input is like the bricks of a house. You need a strong foundation before building walls or a roof. If you want to speak English fluently, you need to fill your brain with English first. That means getting as much good input as possible every day. Without this foundation, speaking English can feel awkward or stressful. Why input is the foundation of fluency. Input gives your brain the building blocks it needs to form sentences, express your thoughts, and communicate naturally. Many English learners struggle because they spend too much time memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary lists but don't hear or see these words used in real life. This makes it hard to remember them when it's time to speak. When you get plenty of input, English starts to feel automatic. You don't have to stop and think about grammar rules. Instead, you naturally use correct sentence patterns, just like native speakers. That's the magic of input. The more English you hear and see, the more your brain absorbs it, and the easier it becomes to speak and write fluently. Types of input: passive versus active. Not all input is the same. There are two main types: passive input and active input. Passive input happens when English is around you, but you're not fully focused. Examples include playing a podcast while cooking or driving, watching a movie with English subtitles, but not paying full attention. Even though you're not fully concentrating, your brain still absorbs some language. It's like a sponge soaking up water. You might not notice it at first, but it's working in the background. Active input, which we'll cover next, is when you focus carefully on the English you hear or read. You pay attention to new words, phrases, and sentence structures, and try to understand them fully. This type of input is more powerful for learning because it helps you remember language faster and use it correctly. The key is to use both types of input every day. Passive input keeps your brain surrounded by English constantly, while active input helps you notice important words and patterns. Together, they prepare you to speak and write English naturally without memorizing endless rules. Remember, learning English is not about rushing to speak immediately. It's about building a strong foundation with input first, so your output, speaking and writing, becomes natural, confident, and fluent. The more English you hear and see, the easier it will be to express yourself in real life. Now that we understand input, let's talk about the two types of input in more detail: passive input and active input. Both are important, but they work in different ways. Passive input. Passive input happens when English is around you, but you're not fully focused. For example, you might listen to English music while doing chores or have a podcast playing in the background while commuting. Even if you don't understand every word, your brain is still learning the sounds, rhythm, and tone of English. Passive input is very helpful because it makes English feel familiar and comfortable. It trains your ears to recognize the language naturally. However, passive input alone is not enough to make you fluent. It helps you feel comfortable with English, but it doesn't give you the full tools to speak and write confidently. Active input. Active input is when you focus carefully on what you are hearing or reading. You give your full attention and try to understand every detail. Some examples of active input include listening closely to an English podcast and trying to catch every word, watching a video in English without subtitles and paying attention to sentence patterns, reading a story or article in English and stopping to check the meaning of new words. Active input is more challenging for your brain, but that's a good thing. It helps you notice grammar patterns, sentence structures, and how native speakers express ideas. You also remember new vocabulary better. Active input leads to faster improvement because it trains your brain to understand and use English deeply, not just recognize it. Best results: combine passive and active input. For the fastest and most steady progress, it's best to use both types of input together. Passive input surrounds you with English every day, building comfort and familiarity. Active input helps you study English deeply, notice patterns, and remember new words. Together, they create a strong foundation that makes speaking and writing much easier. Real examples of how input improves skills. Let's look at a couple of practical examples. Example 1. Listening growth over time. Daniel listens to English podcasts every morning while commuting. At first, he understands only a few words, but he keeps listening every day. After a few weeks, he notices he can catch more phrases. Some expressions start to sound familiar. His listening confidence grows. Later, during a conversation, he even uses one of the phrases he heard on a podcast without thinking about it. This shows how input slowly turns into output. Example 2. Reading and vocabulary power. Aisha reads a short English story every night. She highlights new words and checks their meaning. At first, she can remember only a few, but over time, she notices that these words appear in other stories, videos, and conversations. Gradually, she starts using them in her own sentences. Her reading improves her vocabulary, which then helps her speak and write more confidently. These examples show that input, both passive and active, is the secret to building fluency. It may feel slow at first, but consistent practice creates long-term results. When your brain is full of English, speaking and writing become easier, faster, and natural. The key takeaway is simple. Surround yourself with English daily through passive input. Focus on active input to notice patterns and learn new words, and watch your skills grow over time. This is how English moves from being something you only understand to something you can use confidently in real life. When Aisha read a short English story every night, she highlighted new words and checked their meanings. At first, it was slow, and she could only remember a few words. But over time, she began to recognize these words in conversations and even started using them when she spoke or wrote. Her grammar improved naturally, too, because she noticed how sentences were built while reading. She didn't memorize grammar rules. She absorbed them automatically through reading. This is the real power of input. Real-life examples of how input improves English. Let's look at two simple examples that show why input is so effective. Example 1. Learning through listening. Imagine listening to an English podcast every day on your way to work. At first, you may catch only a few words, and it can feel difficult. But if you keep listening consistently, something amazing happens. After a few weeks, you start to recognize common words and phrases. You begin to understand whole sentences without needing to translate them in your head. After a few months, you can answer simple questions in English more confidently. Speaking becomes easier because your brain has absorbed enough input to respond naturally. This shows how listening regularly turns input into output over time. Example 2. Learning through reading. Now imagine reading a short English story every night before bed. In the beginning, you may need to check the dictionary often and feel like it's slow. But as you continue, you start recognizing words more quickly, understanding sentences faster, and noticing how English grammar works without needing to memorize rules. After a few months, your writing improves because you've seen English in action. You can use phrases and sentence structures from your reading when speaking or writing. Again, this is input gradually turning into output. How much input do you need to see progress? Many learners ask, how much listening and reading should I do to improve? The answer depends on how much time you spend with English and how focused you are. Here are some helpful guidelines. Listening, 30 minutes a day. With regular listening, you may notice improvement in 3 to 6 months. Reading, 15 minutes a day. Over a few months, your vocabulary will grow, and your ability to understand sentences will improve. Combined practice. For faster progress, combine both listening and reading. For example, 1 hour of listening plus 30 minutes of reading daily can help you reach a conversational level in English more quickly. The key idea is consistency. Even if you don't understand everything at first, your brain is absorbing English gradually. Input works like building blocks. Every word, phrase, and sentence you hear or read is another block that helps your speaking and writing become easier. Over time, English starts to feel natural, and you'll notice yourself using words and grammar correctly without thinking too much. Remember, the goal is not just to learn English, but to use it confidently in real life. Listening and reading every day, both passively and actively, creates a foundation that will allow you to speak, write, and communicate naturally. With steady input, your brain collects enough English to respond automatically, and you'll see your fluency grow month by month. These estimates, like listening for 30 minutes a day or reading for 15 minutes, are not strict rules. They're just guidelines. The important idea is this: the more English input you get, the faster you improve. Final thought on input. Think of input as the fuel for your English. Just like a car needs gas to run, your brain needs English input to produce good speaking and writing. If you don't feed your brain with English through listening or reading, you won't have the words, phrases, and structures you need to express yourself. But if you expose yourself to English every day, you'll naturally learn new words, start thinking in English, and feel more confident when speaking or writing. Don't worry about being perfect. Your goal is consistent practice, not perfection. The more you listen and read, the stronger your English will grow over time. What is English output? Now that we understand input, it's time to talk about the other half of language learning: output. Definition of output. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, output is the amount of something that is produced by a person, machine, or system. In language learning, output means the English that you produce. This happens mainly through speaking and writing. Output is how you express your thoughts and use the language you have learned. You might understand English very well through listening and reading, but if you don't practice output, it can be difficult to communicate your ideas clearly. Real-life analogy: music. Here's an easy way to think about it. Imagine someone who listens to music every day, but never tries to play an instrument. They may enjoy music and recognize songs, but can they play music themselves? Probably not. It's the same with English. If you only listen and read without speaking or writing, you'll understand English, but using it fluently will be difficult. Example, John's story. John has been watching English movies for months. He understands a lot, and he enjoys the language. But when it's time to speak, he feels nervous and often forgets words. Recognizing the problem, John decides to start practicing output. He begins speaking out loud every day, even if it's just a few sentences. At first, it feels strange and challenging. But over time, his confidence grows. The words he learned from movies start coming out naturally, and he is able to express his thoughts more clearly. This shows why output is essential. Input gives your brain the raw materials, words, phrases, and grammar patterns, but output is how you turn those materials into real communication. Speaking and writing allow your brain to organize what it knows, test it in real situations, and strengthen your fluency. Key takeaway: input and output work together like two sides of the same coin. Input feeds your brain with English, and output allows you to use it actively. Without input, output is difficult because you lack the materials to express yourself. Without output, input alone is wasted because you don't practice producing the language. For the best results, you need a balance. Listen and read every day and speak and write regularly. Even if it feels uncomfortable at first, output practice helps your brain turn English from something you just understand into something you can actively use with confidence. John also started writing a short English journal every evening. At first, he made a lot of mistakes, but that was completely normal. The important thing was that he kept practicing every day. Over time, John became more confident and started using English naturally. He could speak and write without thinking too much about grammar or vocabulary. Moral of the story: the lesson is simple. To become fluent, you need to use the language. Many English learners spend a lot of time listening and reading, but they avoid speaking and writing because they're afraid of making mistakes. However, the truth is, you cannot become fluent without practicing output. Speaking and writing are what turn your knowledge into real communication skills. They help your brain remember words, practice grammar, and improve faster. 2 types of English output. There are 2 main types of output: speaking and writing. 1. Speaking, using your voice to communicate. Examples include talking with a friend, answering questions out loud, joining conversations. 2. Writing, using words to express your thoughts. Examples include writing messages, keeping a journal, posting on social media. Both types of output are important. Think of them as a workout for your brain. Just like athletes train their muscles to get stronger, you need to train your brain by speaking and writing in English regularly. Why output is so important. Here's an easy way to understand it. Imagine trying to learn swimming. You watch videos, read tips, and study every technique. But if you never get in the water, will you learn to swim? No. You have to practice in real life. The same principle applies to English. Listening and reading, input, help you understand the language, but speaking and writing, output, are what make you fluent. Output lets you remember more. When you speak or write, your brain works harder to recall words and grammar. This strengthens memory. Build confidence. The more you practice, the more comfortable you feel using English. Practice removes fear and hesitation. Identify weak areas. When you try speaking or writing, you see where you make mistakes. This helps you focus on areas that need improvement. By practicing output, your brain learns to use English naturally. Words and sentences start coming out automatically, and your communication becomes smoother. Output is not about being perfect. It's about using English actively every day. Key takeaway: fluency comes from a balance between input and output. Input feeds your brain with English words, phrases, and grammar. Output allows you to turn that knowledge into real-life communication. Listening and reading are the foundation, but speaking and writing are what make you confident and fluent. The more you practice both, the faster your English will improve. When you try to speak or write and get stuck, it's actually a very helpful part of learning. This shows you what you still need to practice or review. Output, which includes speaking and writing, trains your brain to think in English. Instead of translating from your native language, your thoughts begin to flow naturally in English. The more you practice output, the easier it becomes to express yourself confidently. Two main types of output. Just like input has different forms, output also comes in two main types: planned output and spontaneous output. 1. Planned output. Planned output is when you prepare before speaking or writing. You have time to organize your thoughts, choose the right words, and even correct mistakes before sharing your ideas. Examples of planned output include writing an essay, article, or journal entry, preparing a class presentation, drafting an email or message, practicing a script or speech. Why it's useful. Planned output helps you focus on correct grammar and vocabulary. It improves your writing skills, sentence formation, and overall confidence before you speak. It allows you to organize your ideas clearly, which makes expressing yourself in English much easier. Try this. Write a few sentences in a journal every day. Describe your day, your thoughts, or your goals. This simple habit helps you turn your ideas into structured English, and over time, your writing and speaking will become smoother. 2. Spontaneous output. Spontaneous output is unplanned and happens in real time. You speak or write without preparing, reacting immediately to situations or conversations. Examples of spontaneous output include talking to a friend without planning, answering a question in class or a meeting, making small talk while shopping or traveling, leaving voice messages, participating in online chats or forums. Why it's powerful. Spontaneous output trains your brain to respond quickly in English. It builds real conversational fluency and prepares you for unexpected situations like traveling, work, emergencies, or social interactions. Try this. Record yourself speaking about any topic for 1 to 2 minutes without preparing. Then listen to the recording and notice areas where you can improve. Doing this regularly will train you to think and speak in English naturally. Input plus output equals fluency. Fluency doesn't happen by magic. It comes from consistent practice, using both input and output. Input, listening and reading, feeds your brain with English words, phrases, and grammar. Output, speaking and writing, turns that knowledge into real communication skills. When you combine daily input with regular output practice, your brain starts to process English automatically. You'll notice yourself understanding more, thinking in English, and expressing ideas naturally. Over time, you won't need to translate in your head, and English will feel like a natural part of your daily life. The key takeaway is this. Fluency is built by balancing input and output. Consistently read, listen, speak, and write, and your English will improve steadily, giving you the confidence to communicate in any situation. To become fluent in English, you need 2 key ingredients: input and output. Input is what you absorb, mainly through listening and reading. Output is what you produce, mainly through speaking and writing. Both are equally important, and here's why. Input builds understanding. When you listen to English podcasts, watch videos, or read articles and stories, your vocabulary grows, your comprehension improves, and your brain becomes familiar with the sounds and patterns of English. Input is passive at first, which makes it easy to start, but it's the foundation for fluency. Output builds your speaking and writing skills. When you produce English, you strengthen your memory, learn to organize sentences, and practice expressing your ideas clearly. Output is active, which pushes your brain to grow and connect the knowledge from input to real communication. Here's the problem if you focus on only one side. Too much input without output. You understand a lot of English, but struggle to speak or write. You know the words, but they don't come out naturally. Too much output without input. You speak and write, but your vocabulary and grammar are limited. You repeat the same words and make mistakes because your brain hasn't absorbed enough real English. The secret to fluency is to combine both daily. That's how your brain links what you know to what you can say. The language fluency cycle. Fluency is a cycle. Input. You listen and read to collect new words, phrases, sounds, and sentence patterns. Brain processing. Your brain stores this knowledge, connects words, and begins to understand how English works. Output. You use the knowledge in real conversations, writing, or speaking exercises. Feedback loop. Mistakes show you what to review and improve, refining your language skills. Every round of this cycle makes you more confident and fluent. The more input you get, the more you understand. The more output you practice, the more naturally you can express yourself. Fluency is built through consistent practice, not something you are born with. Even 1 hour a day can make a huge difference over time. Combining input and output for daily practice. The goal is balance. Too much listening or reading, and you may understand but struggle to speak. Too much speaking or writing without input, and you won't have enough vocabulary or correct grammar. The key is a daily mix of both. Even with limited time, you can improve by using small chunks of input and output throughout the day. Here's an example routine totaling 30 to 60 minutes. Time of day. Activity. Skill type. Morning. Listen to a 10 to 15-minute podcast or read a short article. Input. Midday. Talk out loud or record a voice message summarizing what you learned. Output. Evening. Read a short story or watch a YouTube video in English. Input. This simple daily routine gives your brain both input and output, helping it absorb, process, and use English naturally. Over time, this consistent cycle will improve your vocabulary, grammar, confidence, and fluency. Even if you have a busy schedule, you can practice English every day. The key is short, consistent sessions rather than long, occasional ones. For example, before bed, you can write 3 to 5 sentences about your day in a journal. This is a small output practice, but it is very powerful if done every day. Mix short and long sessions. Even 5 to 10 minutes of speaking or writing daily is enough to make progress. Focus on consistency, not perfection. Start small and gradually increase your practice time as your stamina and confidence grow. Keep your practice fun and personal. You'll stay motivated longer if your learning materials match your interests. Here are some ideas. Watch your favorite show in English. Listen to music you enjoy and learn the lyrics. Read topics you're passionate about, like sports, fashion, technology, or gaming. Speak about your real thoughts, not just textbook exercises. Here's a quick practice challenge you can do daily. Speak in English for 5 minutes. Write 3 to 5 sentences about your day. That's it. Simple, powerful, and highly effective. Even if you're very busy, you can fit English practice into your day. Practical routines for different lifestyles. 1. Routine for students. Students often have more flexible schedules, making it easier to practice focused English. Morning input. Listen to a 15-minute English podcast while getting ready. Afternoon output. Write a short paragraph summarizing what you learned in class. Evening input plus output. Watch a 30-minute English TV show and repeat some phrases aloud. Extra tip. Join a conversation club or practice weekly with a language partner to get more speaking practice. 2. Routine for workers. Busy professionals can still improve by using small breaks wisely. Morning input. Listen to a podcast or audiobook during your commute for about 20 minutes. Lunch break output. Write a short email, message, or journal entry in English. Evening input plus output. Watch a 20-minute English video, then summarize it out loud. Extra tip. If you work in an English-speaking environment, try to use English with coworkers whenever possible. Even small conversations help a lot. 3. Routine for very busy people. Even if you have very limited time, you can practice with micro-sessions. The idea is to fit English into small gaps in your day. Morning input. Read a short English article, news snippet, or social media post for 5 to 10 minutes. Midday output. Speak or write a few sentences summarizing what you read. Evening input plus output. Listen to a short podcast or watch a video, then say out loud what you learned. These micro-practices may seem small, but when done daily, they add up quickly. Even 10 to 15 minutes at a time can boost vocabulary, grammar, and fluency over weeks and months. Even if your time is limited, you can fit English practice into small moments during your day. For example, during breaks, you can read a short quote or headline, spending just 5 minutes. While doing everyday tasks, try thinking in English. For instance, when making coffee, you can think, "Now I'm making coffee. I am pouring water. I am stirring it." This simple habit trains your brain to process English naturally. Evening output practice can be just a 1-minute recording. Use a microphone or your phone to record a short voice message in English about your day. Don't worry about mistakes, just speak. Extra tip: use language learning apps during waiting times, breaks, or commuting. Small moments add up and keep your practice consistent. How to improve fluency with a mix of input and output. Fluency is not about memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary lists. It comes from repeating the input-output cycle every day. Input, listening and reading, gives your brain vocabulary, grammar patterns, and sentence structures. Output, speaking and writing, helps you activate what you've learned and form responses naturally. The winning formula is simple. Listen, speak about it, read, write about it. Even 5 to 10 minutes of daily output can make a major difference over time. Consistently practicing both input and output is what makes English feel automatic and allows you to express your ideas naturally. Simple techniques to combine input and output. 1. Shadowing. Listen to a sentence and immediately repeat it, copying the speaker's tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. This helps improve both your fluency and pronunciation. 2. Speaking after read a short article, story, or paragraph, then explain it in your own words. This trains your brain to form sentences quickly and naturally, improving your speaking skills. 3. Writing plus speaking. Write a short story, paragraph, or journal entry, then read it out loud. This practice strengthens your grammar, improves sentence structure, and builds speaking confidence. 4. The 1-to-1 rule. For every 10 minutes of listening or reading input, try to speak or write for at least 10 minutes output. This ensures you're not just absorbing English passively, but actively using it. Why consistency is key to fluency. Many learners study hard but inconsistently, which slows progress. Language learning is a habit. Practicing daily, even for 15 to 30 minutes, creates lasting habits. Your brain retains vocabulary, grammar, and sentence patterns much more effectively with regular exposure than with long, irregular study sessions. Learner examples. Anna studies for 15 minutes every day, listening to a podcast each morning. Over time, she notices she can understand more words and follow sentences without translating. Ben only studies 2 hours on weekends. He often forgets words and struggles to speak because his brain isn't used to processing English daily. The difference is clear. Short, daily practice beats occasional long sessions. Consistency helps your brain absorb, process, and output English naturally, building your confidence and fluency steadily. By combining short, daily input and output sessions, using fun and interesting materials, and practicing consistently, anyone can improve their English over time. Even a few minutes every day, repeated consistently, adds up to big results. Let's look at the difference daily practice makes. Anna listens to short podcasts, writes a few sentences, and speaks in English every day. After just 3 months, she feels more fluent and confident. In contrast, John studies once a week for 3 hours. He often forgets what he learned between sessions. His progress is slow, and it can feel frustrating. The lesson is clear. Small daily steps are more powerful than occasional long efforts. The perfect daily English routine. A well-rounded routine includes both input and output. 1. Input. Listening and reading absorb new words, phrases, grammar, and sentence patterns. Examples include listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading news, or stories. This builds the foundation of understanding. 2. Output. Speaking and writing use what you learn. Speak about what you read, write a short journal entry, or summarize a video out loud. Output strengthens memory, improves expression, and builds confidence. 3. Daily practice. Even 10 to 30 minutes a day is enough if it's consistent. The key is to make it a habit, not a rare effort. 4. Fun topics. Choose subjects that interest you: sports, travel, movies, technology, fashion, or gaming. Enjoying what you study keeps you motivated and makes learning feel natural. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. Learning English takes time, and many learners fall into the same traps. Here's how to stay on track. Mistake 1. Too much input, too little output. Many learners spend hours listening and reading but rarely speak or write. They understand English well but struggle to use it in conversation. Fix. Start using what you learn. Speak about what you read, write a journal, or practice sentences aloud. Make output a regular part of your learning. Mistake 2. Too much output, not enough input. Some learners focus on speaking and writing but don't spend enough time listening or reading. As a result, they may run out of words or make unnatural sentences. Fix. Feed your brain new words and patterns. Listen and read daily to fuel your output. Consistent input strengthens your ability to express yourself naturally. Mistake 3. Fear of making mistakes in output. Many learners avoid speaking or writing because they are afraid of mistakes. But mistakes are not the enemy. Even native speakers make them. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. Fix. Accept that mistakes are part of the process. Every mistake is a step toward improvement. Practice with supportive people, find a tutor or a language partner, and focus on progress, not perfection. Key lesson. The most successful learners combine input and output every day. Daily short sessions, even 10 to 30 minutes, create a lasting habit and steadily build fluency. Fun topics keep motivation high, and mistakes are a natural part of learning. Avoid focusing too much on one side. Balance is the key. Remember, input plus output equals fluency. Listen, read, speak, write, repeat. This daily cycle strengthens your brain, builds confidence, and helps English feel natural. Even small, consistent steps will lead to big improvements over time. To become fluent in English, you don't need to be perfect. What you need is practice, consistency, and the right mindset. Using English every day is the key to progress. How to use output effectively. Find a supportive teacher or a language partner. This helps you build confidence and get feedback. Record yourself speaking. Listening to your own voice allows you to catch small mistakes and notice improvements over time. Write something every day. Start small, just a few sentences about your day, your opinion, or something you like. Over time, your writing will naturally improve, and you'll feel more comfortable expressing ideas in English. Final thoughts. How to succeed in English. Balance input and output. Input. Listening and reading help you understand English, learn new words, and absorb sentence patterns. Output. Speaking and writing turn what you've learned into real communication skills and fluency. Be consistent. Even 15 to 30 minutes every day is more effective than studying for hours only once a week. Daily practice builds habits, strengthens your memory, and trains your brain to think in English. Make it fun and personal. Use English with topics that interest you. Watch shows, read articles, or listen to music you enjoy. Talk about your hobbies, cooking, sports, travel, or anything that excites you. When learning is enjoyable, you are more likely to stick with it. Embrace mistakes. Mistakes are proof that you are actively using English. They are not failures. They are steps toward improvement. Every mistake gives you a chance to learn, correct, and grow. Challenge. Start today. Take action right now. Don't just read or listen. Use English today. Speak English for 5 minutes. You can talk to yourself or record your voice. Write 3 to 5 sentences about your day, your opinion, or a favorite topic. Start building your own daily routine, combining input and output every day. If you stick to this path, fluency is not a dream. It becomes a habit built one day at a time. Resources to continue learning. Here are some helpful tools and resources for your English journey. Podcasts: The English We Speak, BBC, All Ears English, Luke's English Podcast. YouTube channels: Speak English with Mr. Duncan, English Addict, BBC Learning English. Apps and tools: EPS on e-flashcards, Hello Talk, Language Exchange, Grammarly, Writing Help, You English. Pronunciation practice. Real pronunciation examples. These resources provide both input, listening and reading, and opportunities for output, speaking and writing. Final summary: input and output. Input equals listening plus reading. This is the foundation of language learning. The more you listen and read, the more natural English will feel. Use a mix of passive and active input. Passive input: background listening to podcasts, videos, or music while doing other tasks. Active input: focused attention when reading articles, stories, or watching videos to notice words, phrases, and sentence patterns. Output equals speaking plus writing. Output is essential to turn your knowledge into fluency. Speak about what you hear or read, write short paragraphs, and practice daily to strengthen your memory and confidence. Remember, consistency, balance, and practice with real-life English are the keys to fluency. Every day you spend listening, reading, speaking, and writing brings you closer to becoming confident and natural in English. Start small, stay consistent, and enjoy the process. English fluency: input and output. To become fluent in English, you need both input and output. Input means listening and reading. It is how you absorb English: words, phrases, grammar, and sentence patterns. You can do this by listening to podcasts, audiobooks, or YouTube videos, reading articles, blogs, books, or simple Wikipedia pages, taking notes or underlining new words and phrases, shadowing, repeating what you hear to practice pronunciation and rhythm. Output means speaking and writing. This is how you use English actively, express your thoughts, and practice thinking in English. Daily output, even for a few minutes, builds real confidence. You can speak out loud about what you read or hear. Record yourself speaking and listen back. Write a short journal, an opinion, or a summary every day. Balance is key. Fluency comes from combining input and output. Too much input alone. You understand English, but struggle to speak or write. Too much output alone. You speak or write, but your vocabulary and sentence structures are limited. A simple rule to follow is the 1:1 rule. For every 10 minutes of listening or reading, spend 10 minutes speaking or writing. This keeps your learning balanced and effective. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. 1. Focusing on one skill only. Many learners practice only listening, reading, or speaking. Balance all 4 skills: listen, read, speak, and write. 2. Relying on passive learning. Just watching or listening isn't enough. Turn it into active learning. Shadow sentences you hear. Summarize a podcast or article in your own words. Write what you learned. 3. Fear of making mistakes. Mistakes are not failures. They are learning tools. Every error is an opportunity to improve. Practice with supportive people, record yourself, and embrace mistakes as part of growth. What you can do starting today. Morning input. Listen to a podcast, audiobook, or YouTube video. Daily writing. Write a few sentences about your day, opinion, or a topic you enjoy. Daily speaking. Talk to yourself for 5 minutes or record your voice. Reading. Read short articles, blogs, or books about topics you love. Create a weekly plan that includes both input and output so that learning becomes consistent and manageable. Recommended resources. Podcasts: All Ears English, The English We Speak, BBC, Luke's English Podcast. YouTube channels: BBC Learning English, Speak English with Mr. Duncan, books/articles, graded readers, news websites, apps. Uni, Quizlet, Vocabulary, Grammarly, Writing, Tandem, Language Partners. These resources help you practice listening, reading, speaking, and writing in a structured way. Final message: believe in yourself. Fluency is not about being perfect. It's about communicating clearly, practicing consistently, and improving step by step. Take action now. Write down a weekly English routine. Start speaking or writing today. Make English a part of your daily life. Consistency, balance, and enjoyment are your keys to success. Every small step adds up. Stay connected with English, practice every day, and fluency will come naturally over time. Stay motivated and take action. If you enjoyed this guide or episode, make sure to subscribe to Code Your English for more practical tips and lessons. Share your progress. Comment on your biggest takeaway from this guide. Share it with friends who are also learning English. Teaching or discussing what you've learned helps you remember and practice even more. Take the challenge today. Ask yourself, what is one small step you can take right now to improve your English? Speak for 5 minutes, write a short paragraph, or read an article. Small daily actions add up to big improvements over time. Final words: fluency doesn't happen overnight. It grows step by step, day by day. Consistency matters more than perfection. Keep listening, reading, speaking, and writing. Every bit of practice makes your brain stronger in English. Remember, input equals listening plus reading builds understanding, vocabulary, and sentence patterns. Output equals speaking plus writing strengthens fluency, memory, and confidence. Balance is key. Use both every day to connect what you know with what you say. Small, regular actions create habits that lead to real fluency breakthroughs. Keep going, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep believing in yourself. Thank you for being part of this English learning journey. Your daily effort makes a difference, and every minute of practice brings you closer to speaking English naturally and confidently. I'll see you in the next episode, ready to take your English to the next level.